So, hey everybody, look, today's news out of Washington, D.C. sucked. I think we all knew that it was likely that Republicans were going to jam Brett Kavanaugh's nomination through the Supreme Court, but there aren't very many of us who wanted to admit it. And we believed that we had a chance to really fight and to be able to make something good happen for democracy by stopping Kavanaugh. Hi, Mom. Thanks for tuning in. But realistically, what happens today with the Republicans consolidating their ranks and being able to approve Kavanaugh to the Supreme Court really is the culmination of the end of a almost 50, 60-year-long plan for Republicans to get to the place where they can lock in their ideological agenda by having complete conservative control of the Supreme Court. And I want to talk about how we got here, and I want to talk about why I still have hope in the face of today and what I think might happen and what we can do to shape the future for a better democracy. So look, let's talk about the underpinnings of how we got here. When Kavanaugh was in front of the Senate committee and he went off about the Clinton conspiracy stuff, we all know that was ridiculous. What we have to recognize is that going all the way back to the 1950s, there were a few forces that came together for Republicans. You can read Nancy MacLean's great book, Democracy in Chains, and learn about how this all happened. But what came together was the segregationist ideology out of Virginia, the economic libertarianism of Milton Friedman from Chicago, and then eventually the evolution of Christian conservatives who wanted a radical Christian agenda in a country that believes in freedom of religion. Those forces came together to create the modern Republican Party. They have worked for years to shift the structure of government, our election laws, and eventually their final capstone has been the goal to be able to win the Supreme Court. And with the Kavanaugh nomination, it looks like they're going to get to the place where they will be able to lock in a very conservative Supreme Court majority. We know that even with a moderate Supreme Court, when Kennedy was on the court, that a moderately conservative court, I should say, that they were able to do some things like putting Citizens United into place, which obviously gave away your power and my power to access the vote by making it more accessible for millionaires and corporations and powerful and rich influencers to be able to take over elections. And when they can control the court and they can control elections, then they can control the legislature and they control who's in the presidency and what they're doing. And you see that right now all of that is laid out. So that's bad enough. I'm not going to belabor all of it. Here's what I want you all to think about. I want you to think about how we fight back. And I believe right now in two very specific things. Number one, I believe that what will save us is democracy. We have the greatest tool in the history of the world to fight for common people at our disposal, and it's not gone yet. Obviously, with the influence of money on politics, gerrymandering, and so many other things, that our democracy is fragile. But we still have democracy, we still have the right to vote, and we have to exercise it when we can, and that is 2018 midterm elections. When we have the opportunity to exercise democracy, we need to elect people who have some very basic things that we used to expect from all politicians. Number one, we have to elect people who have moral clarity about who they're fighting for. And number two, they have to have the authenticity to be able to stick at it for those people and to not give in on their principles, because we need leadership. Here's what I believe is happening in the Democratic ranks at the bottom to be able to bring us back and start our battle. They've just won. They're about to win a 50-year game to be able to do what they want with the Supreme Court. We have to be able to win a long-term game, and we have to be thinking about how do we do that now. So if we're going after that moral clarity and that authenticity, what is it that we're fighting for? It's really simple, y'all, and it's foundational to the people of the United States. We need elected officials who remember that what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to have a government that is of, by, and for the people. And each one of those three things means something very specific. Of the people means we created this government, we made the rules, and we shouldn't give it away to corporations or millionaires or anyone who thinks that they can take away what is ours, of the people. Number two, by the people. The people that you elect, people like me, we are real people and we should be electing real people. That doesn't mean we all have to agree. That doesn't mean that everyone has to think the same way that I do, believe in the same policies. But it does mean that we need people who are in office because the people chose them, not because corporations put them there, not because gerrymandering made it possible for them to be there, not because a 40-year plan was put together to figure out how to get more conservatives through the court system so that eventually you could end up with a Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. We need regular, everyday people. That is who our government should be run by. That's the by the people. And then finally, for, our government should be for the people. Our government was created to give liberty to people who had been oppressed by a government that was run by tyrant kings. We don't need to be run by tyrant politicians here in the United States. And we have to remember that our leadership is for the people. And when we get to that final phrase, it's not just the of, by, and for. It's the people. Who are the people? The people of the United States are diverse. The people of the United States want to be inclusive. The people of the United States means everyone. And this long-term Republican agenda has used one of the oldest political techniques in the book in a way that people 1,000 years from now will write about, because no one has done better at the divide and conquer than Republicans have since basically the civil rights era. Shoot, go back longer than that, and there's been plenty of divide and conquer in the United States. But Americans, when you get past party labels and you ask Americans, what is it that you want from your government, a government of, by, and for the people? They don't want what these Republicans are doing. They don't want what Kavanaugh wants. Americans, when you ask them, by and large, in huge numbers, want things that are pretty basic and that are actually progressive. Americans want an opportunity to work so that they can make a living for their families and build a strong community. Americans want their family to be appreciated, and they want their families to be protected, and they want their families to have clean air and water, and they want the people in their families who they love to not be discriminated against or biased by the criminal justice system or treated poorly by their government, whether that be in policy or policing. And people want communities where they feel safe and welcomed, and where they believe the community will take care of them, and where they can pitch in and take care of community. Americans love being with each other. We don't love being divided like the way we are right now. We love supporting each other because we believe deeply in democracy, because we believe it takes a nation of all of us, because we believe this is a participatory country. This is a participatory exercise as democracy. And so we want to be able to work together across difference, and that's why we have to have hope and perseverance to not give in the midst of this downward spiral that the Republicans have put us in since 2016. So look, we should have hope about the Democratic revival. And when I say Democratic in this case, I'm starting with little d, but I do believe that the big D Democrats are leading it. And I believe we're leading it right here in North Carolina, y'all. Now, many of you have heard me say this story before, so I'm going to do it in brief. But Republicans have been on the ascent nationally for the last few years, whereas in North Carolina, Democrats have been on the ascent. We picked up seats in our legislature in 2014. We've beaten back gerrymandering cases. In 2016, we flipped our governor's race. We flipped the Supreme Court. We picked up seats in the legislature. We had gains in all three branches of government when Democrats nationally were getting their clocks cleaned. So what was happening? And in North Carolina, we were able to make progress when the rest of the country was tilting in the direction of this divisive presidency and divisive Republican Party? Well, let me point out a couple of things that made a difference here in North Carolina that I hope the national Democrats can understand. Number one, we've learned how to speak from a place of values, because you don't win arguments by trying to prove to someone that you're smarter than them. You win over people by connecting to them through shared values and making them believe that even if they don't like your party label or some of your positions, that you have things that you can do together in a community. And that's what Democrats have been able to do here in North Carolina to convince people to vote for us. And when we have the chance, the Democratic revival here will do things that will make people understand what government of, by, and for the people means. It means that we will, if Democrats retake the House in 2018, it means that we will end partisan gerrymandering, turn over the redistricting process to people in the community who will lead nonpartisan redistricting through some type of citizens' leadership, we hope, and will be able to break down the barriers that stop people's votes from mattering. And then, once we are able to stop gerrymandering, we can expand Medicaid and make healthcare accessible and affordable so that you don't have to get fired from your job just because you're sick, or go broke because you have a baby or you have an elderly parent who's in the hospital and you have to pay their bills. And then we can go and fix education and make sure that, like we did in the 20th century, that North Carolina's economic prosperity is based on fully educating our children and making sure that adults have access to the types of job skills that they need to be able to do skilled work, whether it's in a manufacturing plant with their hands or on a computer, or taking care of children or aging adults, whether that be in your home or in your community. We know that education is the driver for economic prosperity, whereas Republicans have been telling us that because of economic reasons, like they need to give tax cuts to corporations, we can't afford to fund schools. They have it exactly backwards. And people will know that. People will know who we're for and why government by and for the people matters when we have the chance to lead. There's more, though, than just legislative issues at stake right now here in North Carolina. We have on the ballot this year some critical things that if you're upset about what happened with Kavanaugh today and what's going to happen over the weekend, you can make a difference right now in 2018 about judicial elections and the Constitution here in North Carolina. So number one, we have 4 statewide judicial elections. Anita Earls is the Democratic candidate for Supreme Court, and you couldn't think of a better antidote to Brett Kavanaugh than Anita Earls. She's an amazing lawyer who's always fought in her career for marginalized and disenfranchised people, believes deeply in fairness and justice for all, and will be a phenomenal Supreme Court member here in North Carolina. She needs your help. If Anita Earls wins, then Democrats will continue to have a majority on the North Carolina Supreme Court. But if she doesn't win, I want to explain to you what's at risk in 2018 and 2019. The Republicans are really upset that they lost control of the North Carolina Supreme Court in the 2016 elections when Democrats elected Mike Morgan. Thanks for all of your help on all of that. They have the ability, if Anita doesn't win this year, and if the constitutional amendments pass, and I'm going to talk about the amendments in just a second, but there's one amendment in particular that gives the legislature the power to appoint judges to vacant seats rather than having the governor appoint judges to vacant seats. If Anita wins, the North Carolina Supreme Court goes from 4-3 Democrat-Republican to 5-2 Democrat-Republican, and we stop them from being able to pack the courts. But if Anita loses and the constitutional amendment that I just mentioned passed, then Republicans have already called us for a November 27th session. Write that down. Be ready to come to Raleigh if necessary. And in that session, they would be able to use existing power under the current North Carolina Constitution to expand the Supreme Court by 2 seats to 9 seats. The 2 new vacant seats under the new constitutional amendment would be appointed by the legislature, not the governor. The Republican-controlled legislature would be able to appoint 2 Republicans to those seats, giving Republicans a 5-4 advantage instead of the 4-3 advantage that has happened from fair elections in North Carolina. So think about that. that we're watching a Supreme Court seat get stolen in Washington, D.C., and there's not much that we can do about it, but we can stop the Supreme Court from getting stolen right here in North Carolina by electing Anita Earls, because they won't be able to flip the court if she gives Democrats a 5-2 majority. That's what's at stake in the 2018 election. There's also 3 statewide appellate court judges. I hope that you'll vote for John Arrowwood, who's an incumbent, Toby Hampson, and Allegra Collins. They all deserve your support. But let's talk about the amendments for a minute. There are 6 constitutional amendments on the ballot this year. I'm going to start with this. Number 1, if you didn't think there was a problem with North Carolina's Constitution yesterday, and you've been okay living under North Carolina Constitution today, then don't vote to change North Carolina's Constitution 6 times tomorrow, all right? There's no need to change the Constitution 6 times on this year's ballot. The amendments themselves are a power grab by the Republicans because they're afraid that they're going to lose power and they'll be able to lock in some of their philosophy through these amendments. Now, already in this society, we have too much power in the hands of too few who are using it to benefit the very few. And these amendments are designed to lock in some of those policies, to lock in a taxation system that benefits the rich and shifts taxes out to people who are working people, shift taxes towards things like property taxes and sales taxes, and make it tougher to tax the richest of us when we end up in a financial crisis. To take away the ability of some people to vote by adding voter ID, to make it more difficult to have more open elections by implementing a new board of elections that they call bipartisan, but would actually be gridlocked because it would be 4-4 from each party and would require a supermajority to pass any new policies, meaning you'd have to get 6 people to pass a new policy, and that supermajority requirement on a 4-4 board seems very, very difficult, except in really common things. And even more than that, with how many independent voters, and there's probably a bunch of you who are unaffiliated voters watching this right now, you won't even have a voice on that Board of Elections because there's no seats for unaffiliated voters or third-party voters. The seats are appointed by the Democratic majority and the Republican majority, and they'd have to be incredibly generous to decide we're going to give our seats away to some other party or to unaffiliated people. I mean, this is just, it's not even a Board of Elections that will truly represent the people in the state of North Carolina. All of the amendments are designed to lock power in for some specific group of people. None of them are designed to actually give more power back to the people. You know what should be on the amendments? We should have an amendment for nonpartisan redistricting, taking the pen to draw gerrymandered districts out of the hands of politicians and giving it back to you, giving it back to people. We could have other amendments that change our structure of government to make it so that we have what we expect in the United States, a separation of powers with balanced across the 3 branches, with some ability for the people to step in and interrupt when the politicians don't support them. But these amendments shift power away from the executive, away from the judicial, into the legislative branch because the Republicans use that to be able to help whoever, whichever powerful interests have their money in the Republicans' back pocket. So this is not the most hopeful of messages tonight, because today's not the most hopeful of days. But I do want you to understand what's at stake and that you can make a difference in this year's election, because we can flip the North Carolina House of Representatives and the North Carolina Senate with legislative elections this year. For the first time in history, we have a Democrat running for every single seat in the North Carolina General Assembly. Wherever you live in North Carolina, you have the chance to vote for a Democrat and help take the power back. And if you live in a safe district like mine or the other ones near me here in Orange or Durham or Chatham counties, then we need you to get out and go volunteer in the nearby districts where we have the chance to make a difference. And no matter where you live, you have to make sure that you vote so that we keep Anita Earls, or we get Anita Earls on the Supreme Court and block that Republican court packing plan, and we stop all those horrible power-grabbing amendments. We have significant work to do this year. So if you're running a campaign, there's a bunch of candidates watching now. Put a link up here and put your campaign up so people can see who you are and find out how to go follow you and see if they can come and volunteer for you. If you want to figure out who to give money to, then look in the comments and see who's posting from some of our races and see if you can give them some support. And if you have more time than you have money, then please call, door knock, you can text bank, you can write postcards. Look, I hear from too many people, oh, I don't like calling people, I don't like knocking on doors. If you stay home this year, if you don't get out and talk to people, they will either not vote or they'll vote the way you don't want them to, and then you get more days like today. If you're watching this, it's because you care. It's because you're fired up about what happened today and you're wondering, what else can I do? And the truth is you can't do much else about Kavanaugh, but you can do something about helping North Carolina in this year's election. We have about 30 days left. And my slogan for this campaign has been no days off. And I'm going to reiterate why. When I started working in public schools and spent 16 years helping kids be the first in their family to go to college, I worked with lots of kids who lived in poverty, and they got no days off from poverty. They got no days off from wondering where their next meal was going to come from. They got no days off from wondering if their parents were going to be home when they got home from school or not, because their parents were working a second and third job from which they got no days off, because they didn't have health insurance. And if they took a day off from school or from work, then they would lose their job just because they were sick. And around this state right now, along the Dan River where there's been coal ash spill, or down the Cape Fear River where we had Gen X spill, there are lots of those families, those poor families who get no days off from drinking bottled water in their own homes because we've polluted our own drinking water supply because of our lax environmental regulations and the way that we've let corporations just put chemicals into our water. And then across a whole third of the state, after Hurricane Florence, we have people who get no days off from wondering, is there going to be a roof over my head? Am I going to have a job to go back to? Is my community even going to be here? And in the wake of Dr. Ford's description of her experience with Kavanaugh in high school, we have to recognize that women who have been sexually assaulted or harassed get no days off from the trauma of surviving that. And they need a government that will care for them too. Look, there are so many people in our society. There are people of color who get no days off from profiling and all kinds of bias. There are disabled people who get no days off from having a hard time just accessing the most basic amenities of our society. But if none of these categories apply to you, you also get no days off right now from the tyrannical Republican regime that's putting Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court and putting these crazy constitutional amendments on the ballot here in North Carolina. And so, while those people get no days off and we get no days off from what's happening in D.C. and Washington, let us take no days off in this election. Let us take no days off from knocking on doors, no days off from talking to people. Use your time when you are at work to talk to people who you've never talked to about politics before and get them to understand what's at stake in this election and what's really happening. Don't be afraid to talk to them with an open heart, even if they disagree with you. But more importantly, have hope to go and find those people who just say, oh, I hate all this politics stuff, I don't care about it. It's not true. It's not possible to not care about what's happening to your family and community. It's not that they don't care. It's that they don't believe that politics can work for them. And with 170 Democrats running across the state of North Carolina right now, no matter where you live and who you are, there is a Democrat out there fighting to represent you and work for you in the North Carolina General Assembly. And you need to figure out who that is in your area, and you need to go tell people about them and what they're going to do, because our candidates are absolutely amazing. I've seen a bunch of them on here tonight. I saw Ray Russell. I saw Wendy Sellers. I saw Kim Boast. I saw, who else is on here? I'm paging through to see who logged in. We have Christy Clark. Hi, Christy. 170 candidates. I can't name you all. But we have the opportunity to show people that there can be hope, even in a time where politics is so polarized and so many things happen that seem to be dispiriting as what happened today. So no days off, y'all. And where I find hope is in those same people that remind me to take no days off. I find hope in knowing that those kids that I helped go to college are out there today trying to make this a better world. I find hope in knowing that their parents continue to go to work every day to try and support their families, and that when I run into them in the community, they see me trying to make a difference, and they believe, and you can do that too. You can inspire people, even if you're not the one running. You have the capability to talk to people about what's possible and make them believe that democracy is what will save us. Because in the face of horrible power plays, master manipulation, obscene amounts of money, we still have the right to vote. And we still have the people and the numbers, and we are going to pull ourselves together and advocate and mobilize and engage and give hope and get people out to vote. Early voting starts October 17th. Absentee ballots are available right now. All you have to do is request one from the Board of Elections, fill it out, get 2 people to sign it, and then mail it back in. And Election Day is November 6th. I'm taking no days off, y'all. Every single day I'm going to be out there. Whether it's your time or your treasure, make sure you give everything that you can give. If you want to help with financing, you can go to gregmeyer.com, and the money that I'm raising from here on out is going to help flip legislative elections. I'm going to be out there knocking on doors and helping my own race, but I'm also going to be out there working for other candidates, and we need as much of what you can offer as you can bring. Let me see if anybody else put any comments on here that I wanted to reply to before I close out. Love all your affirmations for vote. I love that. Start an early voting luncheon with your coworkers. That's great. Have a great conversation. Thank you, Tanya. That's a fantastic idea. Anybody from Wilson County, you need to look up Gene Farmer Butterfield, who's running in Wilson County. Marcy Wofford running for Board of Education. Think about all those Board of Ed opportunities that are out there this year and how you can make a difference at that grassroots level. Bibi says that she's lost faith in both parties who aren't interested in anything but lining their pockets. Bibi, I tell you what, go, I don't know where you live, but go talk to whoever it is that's running for state legislature in your district as a Democrat, and I can guarantee you the reason we're doing it is not to line our pockets. I make $13,951 a year as a legislature. It's not to get rich. I have a bunch of other things I could do. We're in it because we believe in helping people like you. Who else? Appreciate all the love, y'all. Appreciate all the faith. All right, I'm going to sign off. This has gone on long enough. I just can't stand to go through today and let people feel completely dispirited. I know how much work it's going to take. But remember, Republicans may have worked for 40 years until today to get to Brett Kavanaugh on the Supreme Court. But this country has persevered. We will pull together. There is hope out there. It just requires us exercising the thing that makes this the greatest nation in the world, democracy. Let's go do it, y'all. Thanks a lot. Have a good night. I'm Greg Meyer. Hey, share this maybe. Send it out to some friends. Tell them what they can do to get involved. Thanks, everybody. See ya.